Tell me about your journey in becoming a neurosurgeon.
Obviously, seeing my dad going to work every day, I sort of knew this is what I'm destined to become. I didn't choose it. I think medicine chose me. As a Shia follower of Ahlul Bayt, we need to be the best version of ourselves, no matter what. In my career, if you save a handful number of lives, you actually save them. You've saved the humanity like 5 times over. Your work on earth is done.
So if you can just shed some light on some of the philanthropy work that you're doing.
In Spider-Man it says, with great power comes great responsibility. The kind of specialty or the specialization that I have, there does not exist unfortunately, single individual currently in Pakistan amongst a population of over 220 million that can offer those services. There's no way I can just keep this all to myself or within the United States.
There's one set left, hardcore, Federer or Nadal, who's gonna win? Favorite food, guilty pleasure? Longest surgery you've performed?
In terms of hours,
Or is there another way in terms of looking at, pardon my ignorance there, but yeah, I guess in terms of hours.
the longest was the one that we started at.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for tuning into Up Close and Shia podcast. I am incredibly excited today as I get a chance to host my friend on the show. Today, I have Dr. Aqueel Pabaney. Dr. Aqueel isn't your ordinary MD. He is a neurosurgeon. Yes, let me say that again. He is a neurosurgeon. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. The Shia Ummah at large, we have plenty of doctors. But if you Google or ChatGPT, what is the toughest or most stringent medical specialties to obtain? The answer that you will get is Dr. Aqueel. So with that, Dr. Aqueel, thanks for accepting my invite and coming on to the show.
Assalamu alaikum, Ali. Thanks for having me here. It's a privilege.
Absolutely. It's a privilege for me to have my friend here. So we're going to get right into it. Let's start with a quick little bio. So tell me just a little bit about your family background.
I'm a Karachiite through and through. So, born in the 80s, so millennial generation.
Yep. Same.
Yeah,
A lot of synergy here already.
That's right. Yeah, right. So we're off to a good start. Yeah, so born in Karachi, raised high school, medical school, found my wife there. We got married there, and then moved to the US in 2008. Karachi is home. My parents, my wife's parents, they all still live there. We still have a lot of family. And so, as I say, you can take the man out of Karachi, but you can't take the Karachi out of the man. So,
Okay.
so a big part of me still lives in Karachi.
Okay.
So I was blessed to, be brought up in a very loving home, obviously with parents. And then Alhamdulillah, I'm the eldest of 3 siblings. So I have
Eldest of 3. Got it.
Yes,
Okay.
I have a sister now, younger one, who is in Melbourne, Australia, mashallah. And then another youngest brother is in Massachusetts area. He's a dental surgeon. And as I said, a lot of cousins still live there. We have a lot of memories. So yeah, my dad's a dentist. He's a dental surgeon. He was one of the original orthodontists in the country, in Pakistan.
Wow. Okay.
So people find it surprising that I didn't follow his
Go
footsteps.
that route,
My
sure.
brother did, but I chose a different career path. So yeah.
And we're going to get into that. And
Sure.
So, perfect, beautiful opening there. Let me ask you this. When you shifted here to the States, because we've had conversations, just a little bit on what sort of cities you've been here in the United States. You currently obviously are here in Atlanta. You stayed in Dayton, I believe, in the past before. What else? Where else have you stayed in Atlanta or in the U.S.?
Yeah, so when we first moved here in 2008, we started our journey actually in New Jersey.
In Jersey?
Yes, so that was where we landed. One of my dad's
Plymouth Rock for the Daisies.
right. Well, my dad's sister used to live part-time in New Jersey. So we landed there because I made that as my base camp from where I was going for my interviews for residency and whatnot. But eventually we moved to Detroit, Michigan, and we stayed there for 7 years. So had a great time there. My residency was there. From there, we moved to Shreveport, Louisiana. I didn't know that place existed until I went there.
Okay, I don't think I knew about the Louisiana.
Yes, so we spent a year there, and then life took us to Dayton, Ohio.
Gotcha.
And we were there for about 3 years. We had a great time there. It's a smaller Shia community, but we were very actively engaged in that community. And then life brought us to Atlanta in 2020.
2020. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Gill. Let's get right into it. So tell me about your journey in becoming a neurosurgeon.
Yeah, so we'll try to keep it brief.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, I'm sure this could be long.
Yes. So obviously, the first I think just growing up, obviously seeing my dad going to work every day, dealing with patients, I think medicine or being a doctor was sort of written in my genetic code, if you
Okay.
will, right? And so I sort of knew this is what I'm destined to become. I didn't choose it. I think medicine chose me in a way. So I never looked at other disciplines like I don't know, business, finance,
Sure.
engineering, nothing. It was just it was meant to be. But then growing up, I always had this conflict. If I'm going to be a dentist like my dad, or I'm going to be a different kind of doctor. So when the time drew near for me to decide, my grandparents, my marhum, my grandfather was like, he was a businessman. He was like, it makes perfect sense for you to just do dentistry and just take up your dad's very successful dental
Carry the
practice,
legacy, right?
right? So it's easy. It was easy, but I just I was like, no, this is just too easy, right? And so my dad, thanks to him, he had a very broad vision, and so he took me to this medical conference in India in late '90s, and I saw and attended some dental seminars, and I attended some medical seminars in that conference. And when I came back, I was like, that's it. I'm going to do medicine. I'm not doing dentistry.
Okay.
And my dad and everybody else was very supportive of that
Let me,
idea.
if I'm sorry to cut you off, but what was there at that conference that sort of, that trigger came in to know that no, it's medical, it's not dentistry.
I think the biggest trigger was when I attended those seminars. I realized I could become a doctor for the heart, for the brain, for diabetes, for in surgery. So I felt like there were so many avenues that I could
Sure.
explore. Versus in dentistry, I'm just going to be probably very limited to just the mouth, right? And which
Sure.
is that was obviously an immature perception at that time. Like even in dentistry, people specialize in different things, in orthodontics, endodontics, oromaxillofacial surgery. So that in itself is exceedingly a broad specialty, right? But at that time, I think that I think part of me knew I wanted to go into medicine and not dentistry, and I think that conference just sort of solidified
Okay.
my decision. So we come back, and then alhamdulillah, I got into the best medical school in the country at Aga Khan.
Okay.
And even then, I was like, once I started medical school, I wasn't really sure what specialty because I didn't have much exposure. I had done some rotations during my high school in the hospital, like in pediatrics and general wards. But once I started medical school and I was introduced to neuroscience for the first time, it just blew me away. And the reason was because there was just so much that's still is unknown about the brain and its workings, right?
Sure.
Like when we were studying, yes, we knew the anatomy and the biochemistry and the physiology, but at the end of the day, a lot of things were like, well, we assume or we hypothesize this is how things work in the brain, right? And the diseases and the pathologies of the brain were just fascinating. And above all, when we were going through our neuroscience module, things were just easy for me. They were just came to me, right? I didn't have to sit down and memorize and have a
Okay.
hard time. A lot of my friends did have a hard time like understanding, but for me it was just like easy, just came to me naturally, right?
Just clicking
So
together.
then at
Yeah.
that time I'm like, well, okay, so neurosciences or neurology will is it's that I knew that's my sense of direction. And then early on, my med school, I think second year, I had this opportunity to just see a brain surgery, right? So I went to the OR, and there was a late night. It was one surgery was going on, and I happened to just be there. And when I saw the brain for the first time exposed, and the surgeon just working at it, I'm like, that was that moment of epiphany. I'm like, that's it. I'm like, the fate
Okay.
is sealed. This is what we're
This is
gonna do.
it.
This is it. And I still remember that day like yesterday. I came home and I told my dad, I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And he looked at me as if like, he's like, why don't you go sleep it off? And maybe tomorrow will be a new day. And I'm like, that's it. No, I'm intoxicated with this thing. And then this is what I'm going to do. And never look back.
Wow, no, that's an amazing takeaway because just knowing myself, it would be the opposite. If I saw a brain out in the open, I'd be like, that is not for me. So,
Sure.
so when we talk about, so thank you for the history there. So the medical journey, and as you're kind of talking through that from your experience, is very rigorous, right? A lot of schooling, a lot of different programs that you have to go through to obviously become an MD, and then obviously even more so if you want to be a specialist of something. How much did neurology or becoming a surgeon, in particular, obviously a neurosurgeon, how much like timeline did that add to that overall journey?
It is a long, drawn out process, right? I would say the overwhelming majority of your youth is spent either diving into books or being in the hospital.
Sure.
So for me, medical school in Pakistan is 5 years. So we
Okay.
did that. Then a year of internship. So that's 6. Then you add a year or so in between because you're preparing for your USMLE, which is the exam you take if you want to come and train in the United States. And then 7 years of residency, which is the longest residency in the United States for any specialty, right?
Okay.
Majority specialties are 4 or 5 years, but neurosurgery is 7.
Sure.
And then you add another couple of years for fellowship because if you want to super specialize, let's put it this way, right? But because once you're on that path, you're like, you might as well just super specialize. And as time goes on, that sort of becomes a demand, right? Back in the days in the 70s, people like, if you've done metric or high school, you're good. Then they were like, oh, if you have just done MD or MBBS, you're good. So now just a neurosurgeon is not good enough. You have to do a fellowship, right? So I would say, give or take 15 years is what it took from starting med school to becoming, a fellowship trained neurosurgeon.
Wow, mashallah. Okay. I'm going to shift gears. You are quite involved in the Shia community. And as you were mentioning, you've lived in many cities, Detroit obviously being a big hub for our Ummah. Dayton, you mentioned a smaller community, and obviously here in Atlanta. And of course, your background in Pakistan and Karachi. So you're quite involved. I've seen you. You are attending all the programs. You have a ton of responsibilities. Alhamdulillah, mashallah, 4 kids. So with all that going on, you have your wife, of course, Sabika's at home, right? No, or not at home. She's going everywhere. So with all that said, and all these responsibilities, and some of the philanthropy work, which we'll get into here in just a moment, how do you find the time, right? So how do you prioritize? And I mean, I've seen you attending all the programs. I've seen you even double down and sometimes go into multiple programs, especially when we were talking Muharram, there's multiple majalises going on. So how do you manage that time and make Deen a priority in that busy schedule?
First of all, let me say, I think I've been successful in creating this false perception that you are telling me about. So, as they say, fake it till you make it. So I guess I have made it.
Alhamdulillah, yes.
Alhamdulillah. But God's been very kind because, as you said, it is very important to have a very supportive and an active life partner, right? And
Yes.
so my wife is the engines behind all this, right? So obviously with my work and other commitments, she's the one taking care of the house, the kids, and making sure that we all have a life of sanity. And now, having said that, when we were in Michigan, as you said, huge Shia community, but for one reason or the other, because my residency was so rigorous and busy, and we were working north of 100 hours a week, it was really hard to sort of be actively engaged in that community, right? I mean, we would go to the programs and attend majalis and whatnot, but we could not just, at least I could not just be actively engaged. And then obviously Louisiana didn't have any community and Dayton was small. But when we moved to Atlanta, we had this realization that, alhamdulillah, we're blessed to be in a city where you have such a huge and a diverse community. Yes. You have so many centers and imam bargas where you can get a different flavor of Deen everywhere you go, right? Sure. So from Darya Abbas to Zainabiyya to MCC to Ilm and so on and so forth. And so we were like, for us, it was drinking from a water hose, right? And we're like, we have Ilm and Deen and Azadari and kids programs everywhere. And so I think part of it is we started developing this FOMO, right? A fear of missing out. And we're like, oh, this program is great for kids. We should go there. And then this program is great for us. And then there's this workshop and that workshop. So we tried to get, we would get stretched thin running everywhere. In a way that was good, but I think that does bring in an element of maybe some burnout. So in essence, we might be pretty soon start to cut back on some of those activities.
Okay.
because you want to spend time at home as well with the kids. But again, having said that, I think it's important, especially in today's day and age and this current climate, it's important for the kids to know and understand, as we were talking about, to know where they come from, know what their belief system is, stay grounded, know their history, both Islamic history and otherwise, and be able to connect with that, right? Because if we don't actively do that right now, a lot of religion we learned growing up in Pakistan was just passive, right? Because we were there, the environment was there. We sort of just like learned a lot of that by sheer osmosis. Right?
Sure, absolutely.
But here we have to like actively instill those values and teachings in them. Just being at Sunday school just not going to cut it.
Sure.
Right. So I think a lot of that effort, and I'm sure you do the same, and so does most members of our community. We do a lot of this just to make sure that our kids continue to stay on this path, and growing up, they are steadfast and be true representatives of our faith and religion, right? While obviously upholding and being good citizens of the society at the same time. So I think that's really important. I think that to be successful in today's day and age basically means that you're able to carry both responsibilities, your professional and your personal, which includes your faith and religion. And if you become successful in one where the other is completely neglected, it's really not a successful life. Absolutely. So I think all that, keeping that in mind, I think that's why we're running around like headless chickens and trying to make it to all the programs. Okay. And I think for me, at least personally, it's great for networking, right? I mean, you get to meet all sorts of people, connect. Sometimes you run into people who have needs in the community, obviously, so you're able to help them out. So I think all in all, it's great to be in a community like this.
No, Jazakallah, that's amazing. So kind of staying to that topic, right? So if I sort of recap, it's almost like a requirement for the next generation and for the kids that you have to actively stay involved in their lives and actively give them that environment at home and even outside of the home where they get exposure to our deen, right? So beautifully said. With that, how does the faith like motivate you as you were going through your journey, right? And as you're progressing in life? How did you use faith to actually motivate you and keep you going?
Yeah, so I mean that's a tough one, right? In many ways, but obviously growing up, we just did not have, at least I did not have a ton of local Shia role models to look up to. Now, obviously, when I came to the United States, I was introduced to IMI, Imamiya Medics, and obviously I was, that was an eye-opening experience for me. But I always felt like as a Shia follower of Ahlul Bayt, we need to be the best version of ourselves, no matter what we do. But then secondly, you need to do something which is just extraordinary and go down this path that nobody has at least tried to go down.
And become a neurosurgeon?
Yeah. Or, you can become a NASA astronaut. It doesn't matter, right? And so it doesn't matter. But because at the end of the day, I feel like I always had this nagging feeling, like, so when you die, or even let's say if you're alive, inshallah, and the Imam comes in, his zuhur happens, inshallah, and if you're around, then you can just come up to him and say, I did something meaningful with my life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And alhamdulillah. So I think that was just a small part of that kind of kept me going. Okay. But then, for every doctor, if you ask them, like, this ayat of the Quran where it says, if you save one life, you save the entire humanity, in Surah Ma'idah, right? And you kill one person, you kill the entire humanity. Yes. Just to sort of paraphrase the ayat, obviously. So I knew that, if in my career, if you save a handful number of lives, you actually save them. You've saved the humanity like 5 times over. Your work on earth is done.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I mean, that's amazing. And if you really believe, and I'm sure we do, in Allah's justice and His raham, of course, if you save lives 5 times over, that's a highway to heaven, right? In a way.
Yeah, sure.
So I think with that, and then we have so many examples of very famous healers in history that kind of keeps inspiring you. And we have all these big names like Ibn Sina and Khwarizmi and whatnot. They have written volumes of books and treatises about the pathology of the eye and this and that. So in essence, a lot of medicine that we know right now comes from Muslim scholars and Islamic sources. Exactly. So if we don't take benefit of that, then who else will, right? So I think if you put all this together, I think that has always been a source of inspiration. And then now, I probably should mention this because I do this almost on a daily basis. Every surgery I start, obviously it starts with a Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, right? Every surgery, alhamdulillah. But if it's something exceedingly complicated that I'm very nervous about, or I have to do a big case, or it's going to take 10, 12 hours, obviously it's Bismillah, it's Surah Fatiha, it's Nade Ali, it's Ayatul Kursi, and Dua Imam Zamana, right? So, and then at the end of the day, as soon as you put the knife to the skin, I just ask Hazrat Abbas and that I'm like, okay, this is in your hands now.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna do the work, but you're gonna watch over me. And alhamdulillah, it works. Yeah, do we get into trouble in surgeries and stuff? Sure, but you know that there's all these people who are watching over me right now, right? Because I've asked them all to come for help. So I know that they're there, they're watching over me, maybe guiding me. And that just puts my heart and mind and obviously my hands to ease, right? And I think if you have faith, it doesn't matter what faith you have, right? But I think if you have faith, that does play a big role in helping you through these complex and difficult situations.
Jazakallah. That's a beautiful answer, and I really appreciate that. That's deep. That's deep,
Yeah.
Aqueel. That's beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna come back to this. I alluded to it a little bit earlier. With all your responsibilities, I've also, you've been involved in a lot of your philanthropy work. So pardon my ignorance here. I've just got to learn about that actually from others. So you're very, private with that, but alhamdulillah. But now I'm going to expose that out. I'm going to ask you to expose that just a little bit. So again, with all of the things that you've got going on, you are also doing some of this philanthropy work. If you could just shed some light, I think a lot of the work that you're doing back in Pakistan and providing obviously your experience and services back there, and what I've heard is free of charge. So if you could just shed some light on some of the philanthropy work that you're doing currently.
Let me start by saying this. In Spider-Man it says, with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Yes.
So as I said, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed to have all this training and expertise that is very unique and has this very niche demand for it, right? So I feel like you have to give back, right? There's no way I can just keep this all to myself or within the United States. And after my training was done, I realized that the kind of specialty or the specialization that I have, there does not exist unfortunately, a single individual currently in Pakistan amongst a population of over 220 million that can offer those services, right? So just to take a step back, my specialization is that I'm what we call as a dual trained vascular neurosurgeon. So for most people who will understand, if you have a cardiothoracic surgeon who can do open heart surgery, and then you have an interventional cardiologist who does catheter-based work like through the wrist or going through the groin. So we do the same thing for neurosurgery for brain, but I'm both cardiothoracic and cardiologist roll into one. So I can open the head if I want to, and I can go through the catheters minimally invasively and do that. So that kind of skill set, alhamdulillah, we do not have that in Pakistan. We have surgeons who can open the head, but they can't do the catheter work, and we have people who do the catheter work but cannot open the head, right?
Yeah, sure.
But being trained in both gives you this very unique perspective that is just exceedingly helpful for the patients. So coming back, there's a huge burden of disease, stroke, and related to brain blood vessels of the brain in Pakistan, right? And there are actually a very handful number of really good, well-trained people who are doing it, but just 5 or 10 people cannot carry the burden of disease that 240 million people harbor. So you need more people, you need more expertise. And when I finished my training, I was like, there's a lot of pathology that needs to be treated around the world, but what better place to get started with some work like that than our country? Because, I know the people there, I know the infrastructure. If I go back and forth, I get to see my parents, so that's an added bonus. Yeah. And just help people. And so I think one thing led to another. Once you get started with a good niyat and, with an honest intention, God just snowballs, and God just creates pathways, and you have these networks that start to open up suddenly. You don't have to do it. I think God does it, right?
Absolutely.
And so, as I said, and then I made connections here in the United States. I met people who were very generous to give me tools and the toys that we use to treat these conditions, which are ultra expensive.
Sure.
They gave it to me for literally of no charge whatsoever, and all I had to do is stuff them in my suitcase, connect with those people there, find the patients that need that help, and go and just find a hospital and start working. And we were able to treat like multiple patients in a span of a couple of weeks when I'm out there, and it's exceedingly rewarding because we are addressing or we're treating the most vulnerable population. Those are the people that cannot afford, that are essentially living on less than $1 a day. So there's no way they can afford that kind of treatment.
Sure. Yeah.
And then secondly, just the fact that you go and treat them. There are people, there are Muslims, there are Pakistanis, and you do it free of charge. There's nothing to gain from it except the blessings from the Almighty, right?
Oh
So that feeling in itself is,
Yeah.
and but again, I don't do this alone, right? So I have to be thankful for my institution here in the United States. Emory is generous to give me that time off, and more importantly, my wife who is left here alone with 4 kids, and she manages the home. So because of her, I'm able to go do this work, and but I've done it a few times, and it's been just both an eye-opening, but a spiritually and exceedingly rewarding experience.
Jazakallah. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bihaqi Fatima Zahra, you keep doing that and giving your good services back to the folks that are less fortunate. We're gonna bring it back home, and the last question in the first segment of the show, just to kind of bring it all together. So for aspiring, the next generation, or even aspiring medical students that just may be a little bit on edge, or just not able to sort of understand what their path is, like the way that you found yours after you're visiting India, what sort of practical sort of guidelines or thought process or logic could you share with that aspiring student to say, maybe this is not a framework, not a checklist, but some of the things that really you want to ask yourself to help maybe identify and narrow down what that specialty should be for the aspiring medical student?
Well, if we're talking about medical students, it means that they already know that they are going to become a physician, right? So, but if you take a step back and say, okay, well, what about people who don't want to become doctors, right? So I think the first thing you have to do, you have to tell them is, you just have to follow your dream. You have to follow your passion. So let's say you wake up one day and you say, hey, I want to be, as we said, well, I want to be an astronaut. And if that's what you want to be, you just have to go after it. Okay. Don't be afraid of whether it's possible or not. Don't be afraid of thinking of what the society or the people or what the uncle next door might think.
Sure.
If this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do. You're gonna live once only, so you better make it count.
Yep.
It's you're not going to get those opportunities, and it doesn't matter what specialty you want to go into or what career path you choose. But if you want to do it, and if it's something outrageous, you go ahead and do it. You don't listen to anybody. So that's the first thing. Second, if you want to do medicine, you have to understand that it's going to be a long haul. It's not a career choice. It's actually a lifestyle choice. So if you're not willing to do those or make those sacrifices, then maybe medicine is not the right field. But because you have to do it, and you will have to do it time and again, multiple times a year for the rest of your life, right?
Sure.
So you have to ask yourself from within and say, am I willing to make that sacrifice? And if not, then maybe medicine is not the right specialty for you. All right, so let's move forward. So let's say you make the decision, fine, this is what I want to do. I'm willing to make those sacrifices. I want to do this. This is the lifestyle that I've chosen for myself. Then you say, okay, well, where do I go? So then you try to get into the best medical school that you can, right? Scholarships, or you have to pay for it, what have you, right? And then you keep an open mind. You just go to the med school and you just explore every specialty there is out there. Something which is worth pursuing is never going to be easy.
Sure.
Right? Something which is worth pursuing is always going to be hard. So choose that hard option. Go after it, because follow your heart, follow your dream, and then I know this is a long drawn answer.
Yeah,
but
but there's a lot of practicality in there for sure. I mean, you're passionate about it. I can obviously tell for sure. But I think that comes from obviously the support system for sure, right? Your background that you have, and the key sort of common denominators that I take away from that is confidence for sure, right? The guts to go do it. And just knowing what's ahead of you, right? Like face those tough challenges. Right. Kind of what our dean says, right? Like you didn't think that I'm going to paraphrase the ayah. You think that we're not going to try you, right? So,
that's right. Yeah.
So absolutely no. I mean, beautiful, very practical lessons there, and things that I think the next generation really needs to hear, right? I think with the access to accessibility in general, right? The instant gratification era that we're living in, what really pays dividends at the end is the hard work and the effort that you actually put into it. So beautiful answers that I heard there. That's going to wrap up the first segment. We're going to go into the exciting second segment of the show. Aqueel is obviously a first-time guest to our show. He's going to get some questions here that he has not been prepped with. I'm very excited because I've got some questions teed up for him that He's alluded to a couple of these things throughout the conversation, but I'm going to hit him with a different angle. So anyway, Brother Aqueel, this next segment is called the rapid fire segment. The point here is I'm going to just throw some questions at you, and the expectation is that the first thing that comes to mind, you give us that candid response. So it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be candid. You ready?
We're born ready.
Okay. Okay. With neurosurgery off the table, what specialty would you see yourself in?
In medicine?
In medicine.
I would probably lean towards vascular surgery. So it still will be blood vessels,
Okay.
but not of the head, but everywhere else. I mean,
Okay.
we do have a brother in our community who does vascular
Yes,
surgery, and it's always very intriguing to me.
Okay.
So if I had to do something other than neurosurgery, it would be vascular surgery, because I feel it has a lot of impact for the patients. Yes.
All right. Longest surgery you've performed?
In terms of hours, or
Is there another way in terms of looking? Pardon my ignorance there, but yeah, I guess in terms of hours.
Yeah, the longest was the one that we started at 9 a.m. and got done at 2 a.m. the next day. So you can do the math. How much is that? That's 17 hours.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Do you not have to take a bathroom break or what? And you just tell them, listen, there's a life on the table that you're trying to save, right? Wow. And nothing supersedes that. So your own internal desires or needs are silenced for the most part, right? So, I mean, I routinely do 8-10 hour operations routinely. And those are like become a norm, because I think the body is now trained where it doesn't require or doesn't ask for food or go to the bathroom or, so on and so forth. And which brings me to another point, if I may.
Please, yeah, please.
Again, back to our faith and our Ahlul Bayt. So, when I'm doing these surgeries, and some of them require your 100% attention. When Imam Ali was hit in his leg by an arrow and nobody could remove it, and they said, and the Rasul said, just wait for him to get into his prayers, and then, and I can imagine what kind of focus and concentration he would have during those prayers, where you can just remove an arrow from his leg and he would not feel that, right? So yeah, sometimes if I'm focused, my focus will shift a little bit, and you'll start thinking about something else, and you're like, you've got to bring your focus back in. But just imagine the focus of our imams who are in prayer, and they just forget everything else, right? And so I feel like we can just maybe do even just a tiny fraction of that.
Lessons from that, that's a good way to take away from that. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, no, beautiful. Okay, shifting gears. And I kind of asked you this question. Well, not asked the question, but I had it worded in a different way. You've lived in a few cities throughout your life, right?
Yes.
What city did you enjoy the most?
I mean, we're living in Atlanta, right? And we're having a blast. So don't take me wrong. I think every city had its own flavor. We really enjoyed our time in Michigan, because it was the first city we came to. It was our first home. We were just getting introduced to the American culture. Dayton was, as I said, it was a very small community, but it was a very tight-knit community. We were like at the forefront of that, and I was doing a lot of work there, to just, for our kids. And we have very, very strong memories. We still have friends that we still take.
You got to pick one, Aqueel.
Annual trips.
You got to pick one.
I would still say Atlanta.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good answer. Yes. All right, I'm gonna shift gears on you again. So you're an active guy, and we engage in this type of conversation a lot. You're an active guy. You're an overall sports guy, but in particular, you enjoy tennis. That's where you and I have some synergy. I say "some" in air quotes because for the question that I'm lining up for you.
Sure.
There's one set left. Hard court. Federer or Nadal? Who's going to win it?
Oh, Federer, hands down.
Okay. No, I wasn't expecting that answer. I left Djokovic out of it because oftentimes you and I go back and forth with Federer and Nadal. So maybe a follow-up question to that. Who's the GOAT?
Between the three of them?
Between the three. I mean, is there a fourth that you would add to that
No, that's
conversation?
True. No, I mean, yeah. No, I thought just between Federer and Nadal.
No. We have to put Novak.
Yeah, I mean, I think Novak Djokovic is... And the reason I say that is because as much as we love Federer, and there might be some animosity which is unfounded towards Djokovic, which for some reason he has brought it on himself, I still feel that the numbers and his achievements are just simply too huge to ignore. I think...
and kind of spread evenly, right? Like if you add the mixture of obviously different courts between French, between Australian, Wimbledon. I mean, he's kind of dominant everywhere.
And he has stayed at number one for the longest period of time at a stretch. He's still beating guys half his age.
Yep. Okay.
Despite having a bad knee.
Switching gears on you to make your brain really think here, Mr. Brain Guy. Favorite food guilty pleasure?
Oh, I mean, that has to be a dessert, right? For me. Yeah, I got a terrible sweet tooth.
Okay.
My wife makes these wicked Oreo chocolate balls.
Okay.
Those are to die for. Some of her dessert creations
I have
are
not
just
tried that one before. I'm gonna hold her to it now.
Then you don't know what you're missing.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a big sweet tooth guy.
Same
So
here.
any kind of dessert, mostly chocolate, which is unaltered with it doesn't, it should not have nuts and all the other kind of contamination. Yes, I call it contamination. It needs to be just pure hardcore chocolate.
Okay. Sabika needs help with the kids.
Yes.
Or you have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go to Wimbledon.
Wimbledon. I'm not going to even let you finish that question.
Sorry, Sabika. Okay, that was the question. You're going to Wimbledon. Okay, that was easy. And I'll probably be right there with you. Okay, here's the last one of this segment. And you kind of, obviously you've seen the episodes before, but I ask this question to everyone. So beautiful hadiths that we have. We have the beautiful Quran. Any ayah, any hadith from our imams, invaluable. What is one that personally resonates with you in your personal life?
Well, I mean, I think we talked about the two, right? About saving humanity and saving life and humanity. Obviously, that is what just carries me forward all the time. And then the fact that the God's the best of planners.
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing. And I think I don't remember the exact words, but one of the things that Imam Ali talked about is as ignorance or jahalat being the worst of the disease, right? That you can be afflicted with, which basically is testament of the fact that you have to gain knowledge. You just have to read, and that's how Quran started, right? Iqra, right?
Yeah,
so you have to read, and it's unfortunate that, and myself included, that we just don't read enough. Right?
Sure.
We're guilty of the fact that there's so much literature, there's so much material around us, and nowadays it's at our fingertips, right? So you have these websites, alislam.org, and you have podcasts, and you have online access to Quran and Nahjul Balagha and whatnot, and Sayf Sajadiya. I mean, there's so much material. We just have to read. And so I think Imam Ali, and then I think that's one of the reasons that as Muslims we're starting to fall behind, is because we're just not reading enough. And then reading does not necessarily mean pleasure reading, right? So you read, you expand your depth of you fill your knowledge gaps, you go deep into deep thinking, and then you come up with ideas, solutions to our problems, a lot of problems that we're having, and so on and so forth, right? And so and again, as Rasul said, you gain knowledge even if you have to go to China, right? Yeah. And you gain knowledge from cradle to the grave, right? I mean, there's so many ahadiths about that.
Sure.
And so I think Imam Ali really sort of took a different hit at it and said, ignorance is the worst of the diseases, right?
Brother Aqueel, I feel like we can keep talking.
Yes.
And we obviously will in our engagement as it always is. Appreciate everyone joining. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bihaqqa ahlul bayt, keep showering the blessings upon you. You keep delivering those services to all the folks that may be in need. If there's any questions for Brother Aqueel, please don't hesitate to reach out to Up Close and Shia or reach out to Brother Aqueel himself. We thank you very much for joining, and inshallah we'll see you next time on Up Close and Shia podcast. Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz.